Let's take a look on the writing for C1 Advanced. Let's talk about the essay. The essay is part 1 of the Cambridge exam, and everybody on the day of the exam has the same topic. You cannot choose the topic here. This is important to know because maybe the topic is not something you like or is not something you're familiar with. So to compensate that, it's really important to know the structure and the language you should use. And this is what we're going to see. First, let's take a look at the question. The question will always have the same structure. You will have a topic, a main question or a statement, and then 3 subtopics that relate to this main topic. Each subtopic will be accompanied by an opinion. That could be a positive or a negative opinion about each subtopic. And then you have to choose 2 of these subtopics to write about. One of them has to be better than the other, or one of them has more advantages than the other, or that you think is more applicable than the other. And you have to write 220 to 60 words. So this is how a general question will look like. The subtopics are usually related to the opinion. And the opinions are there just to give you a base on how maybe people think about it, or to help you understanding what they mean by this subtopic. You cannot copy the opinion, but you can use it as a base. So let's take a look on a real example. So here you have how it should look in your exam. You have there one main topic, how can sport benefit people? And then the 3 subtopics, building community spirit, providing role models, and releasing emotions. Each of them has their accompanied opinion expressed in the discussion. Again, these opinions, they should not be copied in your text, but they can be a base for your discussion. You can even say the typical people say, right? You can add these opinions like that. Or maybe if you don't understand what they mean by building community spirit, you can go to the opinion and say, okay, being able to cooperate in a team is essentially life. So we have this idea of teamwork. Under the question, you always have those rules of how your essay should be done, so you don't have to memorize it. You have to write an essay discussing 2 of the ways, so you can choose 2 subtopics, and you have to explain which way you think is the most effective. So one of them has to be better than the other, giving reasons to support. And you have to write your answer in 220 to 60 words, and it says, you may, if you wish, make use of the opinions, but you should use your own words. Right? So everything is there. You don't have to memorize, but it's good to know beforehand. So when I get this question, I will use my first 5 minutes to look at the question, and I have to do 2 very important things. I will choose my 2 points. Which 2 points I'm going to talk about? Take your time to think about which one do you think is the most effective, which one do you think is the least effective, or which one do you think is not that effective. And then you're going to plan your answer. This is really important, especially if you're doing the exam. You have to know that you have a limited time. You don't have all the time of the world. So if you start writing and then suddenly you feel like that's not a good reasoning, you don't have time to go back. So if you plan on the first 5 minutes, what you're going to talk, what topics are going to discuss, maybe examples or reasons you're going to give, you're going to avoid that waste of time. In the first 5 minutes, try to organize your answer. And you can organize your answer by having in mind how is the structure. You're going to have an introduction. The introduction should be brief and only describe a little bit the main topic. Don't try to argue everything or to give your conclusion in your introduction. Leave it open. Just call the attention to the reader to the topic and to what you're going to talk about. What are the subtopics you're going to be doing? Then the body, it has to be something organized. It has to be something logical, but you can organize it as you wish. You can talk about advantages and disadvantages, or pros and cons, or different aspects of the same point, but the number of paragraphs, for example, they are up to you. Maybe you want to do 2 paragraphs, one about the first subtopic, the second about the second subtopic. Maybe you want to do 3 paragraphs because you have 3 main ideas about the 2 subtopics, whichever you feel like. You can add here your opinion and you can add examples, but be careful, don't put a lot of this. Don't add all the time your opinion or all the time the examples, because they're going to be a waste of space. You have a limited space that you should, every sentence should count. Every sentence should have a meaning. So be careful with the excess of opinions and examples. And then the conclusion. In the conclusion, you have to give me a direct statement of your conclusion. Which one do you think is best? Which one do you think is the most effective? Tell me that in the conclusion. And if you want in the conclusion to add some consequences, how this conclusion, how this main point will affect in the future. Okay, so these would be the main structure of the text. Now, about the language, be careful with the register. It has to be a semi-formal register, not super formal, but also not informal. It's really important to use linkers. All the linkers you may use to make the text coherent and cohesive. And then the complex language. This is one thing that sometimes we talk about, but we don't really remember what it is. A complex language is a specific vocabulary, using the words instead of saying things or people or they, try to make it specific. Okay? And then complex grammar. Try to add complex sentences once in a while. Don't make it simple. Try to make it more complex. Here are some ideas: conditionals, passives, inversions, relatives, anything else. Remember that when you're writing, you have to impress your examiner. You have to show everything you know. So if you're good at passives, put a passive. Do your best on that. If you're good at conditionals, put a conditional. Maybe you're not that good in inversions, but try to do it. Okay, they will all count as positive. And after writing, remember to always read again, both your essay and your question. Why reading again the question? Because sometimes we start writing and we forget to answer the question. And this is something we have to pay attention when we finish. Also, we have to check the length of our text. See if you have the words required. Maybe rewrite or remove something if it's too long. And then check the paragraphs. This, if you are doing the exam on the computer, make sure that the separation of the paragraphs is clear. Sometimes, because we're typing, it doesn't really shows. Check for spelling, grammar, and silly mistakes. Maybe you are very good and you put a very good passive, but then you forget the third person S, and that's going to be a mistake. So pay attention for the silly or slips mistakes that you have. Also check your tone, check your register, see if it's formal, see if it's coherent, see if everything makes sense. And with this, you will have a very good essay.